Exploring the general purpose input-output GPIO ports of Raspberry Pi. Part 1.1 LED Blink. Let us build the circuit.
Hello. So this is our Raspberry Pi. The LED and the resistor are connected to the pin modules GP17 and ground. And here's the code of part 1.1 of our experiment, which will make the LED turn on and off repeatedly.
Part 1.2 LED with variable brightness.
The code for part 1.2 of our experiment, which will make the LED gradually increase its brightness.
Part 2.1 Checking if a button was pressed. Let us build the circuit.
Hello? So this is again our Raspberry Pi, which is now connected to a push button through the pin modules GP2 and ground. This is the code for part 2.1, wherein when the button is continually pressed, it will continually print out button is pressed. If not pressed, it will continually print out button is not pressed.
Part 2.2 Waiting for a button press. Let us build the circuit.
This is the code for part 2.2, wherein pressing the button will print out button was pressed.
Part 2.3 Running a function after a press.
This is the code for part 2.3, wherein pressing the button will print out hello. 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 Hello.
Part 2.4 Running functions after a press and release.
This is the code for part 2.4, wherein pressing the button will print out hello, and lifting my finger up on the button will print out goodbye. Hello. Goodbye. Hello. Goodbye.
Part 3.1 LED turns on after a press. Let us build the circuit.
So this is our Raspberry Pi. Our circuit is now modified to have a push button, a LED, and a resistor. This is our code, part 3.1, wherein the LED will light up when we press the button.
Exercises. Create a source code that will perform a specific set of running light sequence as shown in figure 1. Light shall run continuously and repeatedly once a button was pressed. It shall change sequence if and only if another button was pressed. The shifting of light from one LED to another LED must be visible to the naked eye, but shifts should not be later than 1 second. Let us build the circuit.
This is the Raspberry Pi 4 connected to the circuit. Here are the push buttons, and they are connected to the GPIO pin 2 and pin 3 of the Raspberry. Output pins 4, 17, 18, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 27 are all connected to our LEDs. We have a total of 8 LEDs and 8 330 ohms resistors. The yellow connecting wire here will let our breadboard share a common ground, and the black connecting wire is connected to the ground pin of the Raspberry. We include libraries on this part of the code, and here we designate pin numbers to their variables. INP1 and INP2 are integers that will be used on our while loop later. Here, we define a function called pattern1. This will make the LEDs turn on and off with a 10 milliseconds delay. Pattern2 will make the pattern go in the opposite direction. The loop statements will gather input data from our push buttons for our Raspberry Pi to know which button was pressed and which pattern to show. If INP1 was set to 1, the INP2 will be set to 0. And pattern1 function will be called, and if INP1 was set to 0, INP2 will be set to 1 and pattern2 function will be called. Now we will run the code. I will now press the first push button. Pattern1 executes. The shell printed set1 sequence 1. I will now press the second button. Pattern 2 executes. The shell printed set1 sequence 2. For the set 2, we have the same LED and button pins. The function is also the same. The only difference is the pattern that LED turns on and off. For sequence 2, the pattern flows in the reverse direction. The while loop is also the same. Now we will run the code. Pressing the first push button will execute the first pattern and prints set2 sequence 1. And the other button reverses the pattern direction and prints set2 sequence 2. For set 3, everything here is also the same. For set 1, we just copied the code from set 2 sequence 2 And for the pattern 2, we copied the code from set 1 sequence 2. Running the code and pressing the first button shows us the same pattern as the set 2 sequence 2, and the second button shows us the second sequence of set 1.
Thank you for watching.